All right, welcome to season 2 of the Pursuit of Property podcast. We're joined right now with the amazing Sammy Story. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. We are really happy for you to be here with us with Placer Title. Thanks for taking the time. We wanted to start this season real quick with a quick question about title. One of the things we noticed is that in real estate, a lot of people don't know what a title company does or how it works. And you obviously work in the networking side of it.
Correct.
But if you want to share with us a minute what you do in the networking side for the title company.
Okay. So to answer to your first part, we are a neutral third party. So we are in contact with all the lenders, all the agents, and we do all the recordings and the documents. As a marketing rep, basically we are the relationship builder. Basically we go out to all the realtors and we offer all of our services. And we have a lot of apps and farming and good stuff like that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, thanks for joining us for this quick title question, Sammy. We appreciate you guys, and thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Mr. Mike Butler, how are you, sir?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. I'm blessed to be here, man. Thank you guys for inviting me.
Thanks for coming on, man. We appreciate you. We've known each other a while now. You're somebody who we've wanted to have on for a while, so we're super excited to have you in today.
I appreciate that, man. I'm looking forward to it. You guys are doing your thing, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Perfect. So can you tell us a little bit, so you're with Mainline Investments, obviously. Can you tell us a little bit about Mainline, what you do a little bit, and then we'll talk about how you got into the business.
Okay, so Mainline is pretty much, this is me and my wife's company. We wholesale property. Ultimately, we're looking into buy and hold, which we might, even create another entity for that. But just getting started in the real estate, that was something that we both came up with, and we just loved it, and kind of just moving forward with that.
Perfect. And how long have you been with Mainline?
Mainline, we started the entity last year in about March, so we're going on about a year and a half. We started wholesaling in January of last year, closed a couple deals in my own name, and then after that point, got a little capital and started our entity and started doing business out of that.
There
Awesome.
you go. So, Mike, I know you've got quite the good story on how you got started in real estate and how it can relate to maybe a lot of people who may be listening.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on your story a little bit?
Yeah, so we started last year in 2019, January. January 1st is when I pretty much gave myself the green light. We can go back to pretty much, I was a teacher, and getting into teaching, you're allowed to teach for 2 years before you actually get your credential. So they're able to hire you on what they call a short-term staff permit, which is a STIP. And if you're lucky, you're granted a second year PIP to finish your requirements. I wasn't able to pass a CSET, which is a test that you have to take in order to continue on with your credential program. When I wasn't able to pass that, they pretty much pulled me out of my classroom. I was a special education teacher. The site that I was at allowed me to stay there probably for like another month or so, right? And then from there, this was in October, I believe I was pulled out of my classroom. And that hit pretty hard because, as you guys know, I have 2 children.
Right.
My wife's been a stay-at-home mom since we had them, just because at that point it was cheaper for her just to stay home than it would be for her to work, because I'd pretty much just pay for childcare. So when I was pulled out of my classroom, it was talk about your back against the wall, man. It was really a dark place for me. Someone who played football at Fresno State, and from there had a job, had my bachelor's degree in criminology. So for the most part, I've always had my life kind of figured out. I kind of always knew what I was going to do next. And so being pulled out of my classroom was really the first time I had no idea where money was going to come from. I was just laying in bed probably around November. So if you guys are familiar with like substitute teachers, coming from being a teacher, you're paid salary. So whether you worked 1 day that month or 30 days that month, you got paid the same amount of money.
Yeah.
As a substitute teacher, you get paid for the days that you work. So when I was pulled out of my classroom going into November, we got Thanksgiving break, and I believe Fresno Unified is 2 weeks off. And then going into December, there's 3 weeks off for vacation. So you're talking about 1 week of pay, which wasn't even enough to cover our expenses. So I remember just laying in bed, man, and I was watching YouTube, and Mark Whitten had a video. He was on the Breakfast Club, and he talked about kind of wholesaling and stuff like that. And I just was like, man, it sounds kind of too good to be true. Threw it in YouTube, found Max Maxwell, started watching that. And like I said, with the back against the wall and everything, you just had to go. I didn't have enough time to really evaluate what it is. I just kind of understood the concept. It seemed not too good to be true, but it made sense enough for me to say, hey, January 1st, I'm just going to hit the ground running and take off. And so that's what I did, man. I asked my wife. Well, I didn't even really ask my wife. I just kind of anything. Like I said, my degree was in criminology. So for me to even go into law enforcement, you're looking at a 6-month hiring process, right? My bills don't wait 6 months. And so at that point, I just told my wife to just trust me, even though, it was hard, man. We didn't know where the money was coming from. But I just had faith in myself, and I just had to ask her to trust me. And, even though there were some hard times in there and she was looking at me, kind of crazy, I was, neglected her a little bit so I can become obsessed with the process. And luckily it just took off from that point, man.
Perfect. So you have that change. You hit the ground running in January. You kind of had a unique story because you were driven and you made it happen right at the start.
For sure.
When did you get that first deal?
My first deal, we closed it, I believe, March 26th, March 27th.
Boom.
For $20,000.
Boom.
Hey.
Right. So you talk
How did
about
that
proof
feel?
of concept. Man, it felt great because I believe about a couple weeks before I had even closed my first deal, I was obviously doing the cheapest marketing that I can do. So we were driving for dollars. I was using Deal Machine, was one of the subscriptions that I had. I was running comps off of Redfin and Zillow, which is crazy now to look back.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I can still do it now, right?
Right.
Some way we made it work, and my phone got cut off probably a week before I actually got my first deal. So it was, so that's kind of how low it ended up going. You got to make sacrifices, and we made it work, man. I don't know how we did it to this day, but I'm glad we did.
Yeah. Well, I met you right at that time frame, right at the very start. We met at a meetup. Who are some of the people that you met at that start that helped you get started? We wanted to talk today with you about networking. You've been one of the best at it. You've done a great job at connecting. We've met you at masterminds, meetups, everything.
Yeah.
Who did you meet at the start?
The first person I met was really Darren Wade. He was someone that we went to the same high school. He's 4 years older than me. I believe he graduated in 2004. I believe that's when I came into high school. But he was just someone that I had always admired in the sense of when you're younger, you kind of look for people who seem to be moving in the right direction, and he had always been someone that I seen that was always doing something positive, always seemed to be around the right people. As you guys know, he's a realtor also with Keller.
Right.
And so he was someone that I reached out to when I kind of had questions about wholesaling. And the first question I had for him was, hey, you're a realtor. What's the difference between what you do and what this is, and essentially what wholesaling is?
Yeah. Right.
And he was like, man, I kind of don't know, and so as we kind of, collaborated on kind of the processes and stuff like that, we realized the difference was instead of selling the house, I'm selling the contract. And so from that point, I got into a Facebook group. Jason has his Facebook group that also hosts the meetings and stuff like the meetups and stuff like that. And so just talking to my wife, I'm like, hey, you're only as good as the people that's around you. So it only makes sense that I go to these things and kind of just lay it all out there and see who's in the same position as I am and just be vulnerable.
So, Mike, it's one thing to show up to all these networking events, right? Like, just show up, listen to what people have to say. But how'd you take it farther than that? How'd you make sure you were gaining value out of the stuff that you were attending?
Oh, man. Because at the end of the day, like I said, you have Jason running this meetup. I think the first guest that I seen there was Michael Zuber. He's a man of action. And it was really just listening to, well, first and foremost, it can become overwhelming when you have people like Jason up there talking about wholesaling, because you're going to find a lot of people who are a lot further than where you are. But the biggest thing is knowing where you are and kind of knowing, what your lane is, because one of the biggest things you don't want to do is spread yourself too thin. And so you hear of all these marketing strategies and stuff like that. And anyone who knows me knows that, I was a big preacher of Deal Machine and driving for dollars probably my first year of wholesaling. And that's because it was the cheapest point of entry. And so just taking my marketing strategy and implementing that with how others reached out to sellers, the conversations that you had with sellers, how you negotiated your prices, finding out from buyers that I met at the groups what they were looking to pay for investment properties, what zip codes were they in. And so I think the biggest thing that I took from those meetups early was to pinpoint an area. And so that's what I did. I found a zip code that I felt really comfortable in, that I felt like that I can execute in, and I just focused on that zip code, and I just dug deeper into that zip code instead of spreading myself too thin by trying to do all of Fresno.
Right.
Yeah.
Because those are all different numbers, right?
Right.
So you just got to kind of know where you are and kind of know your role, and that's kind of what I did. I found my niche, found my zip code that I was good at, and then once I felt like, I was not hitting rock bottom there, or I felt like it wasn't enough, then I started spreading myself.
Yeah. Now, in wholesaling, one of the steps is obviously the back end, right? So getting a disposition, meaning you find the end buyer. How did you go about getting that list of people? What did you do to kind of cultivate that group of people so that when you do assign a contract or when you get one locked up, you know where to go with it?
Man, that came from like you guys we're kind of talking about. That was just the power of networking. That was going to the meetups, finding out who's buying at the time, Facebook groups. I utilized the Facebook not the marketplace, but the groups within within Facebook. I utilized that. Utilized social media, just because when you go to these meetups, the first thing you do, you're going to reach out to these people on social media. You're going to follow them that way. So whenever I got a deal, it would either go on social media. I'd shoot it through a text message to either Jason, whether it be Matt. I just sent it to people that I knew. And then from that point, they brought value to me, because if it wasn't a good fit for them, they most likely had someone that was a good fit for it.
Right.
But I think I did a good job at negotiating these deals early on to where it wasn't so hard to dispo these deals.
Gotcha.
Sweet. So obviously we're focused on networking. We're talking about networking. What has been the biggest impact of meeting all of these people in the business on your business and on you and your growth? How important has that been for mainline investments to come from just an idea to where you're at now and where you're going?
I say the biggest impact that it had was mindset. And I think when you listen to enough podcasts and you read enough books, again, those are things that come from networking, surrounding yourself around the people who are doing bigger and better things than you were doing at that moment. Especially getting into wholesaling, there's not a lot of people and I don't mean to be just so blunt about it, but in the Black community that's in real estate, and so there's gonna be people around you that don't really understand exactly what it is that you're doing. There's going to be family and friends who don't really have faith in the process. I talked about this thing for like 6 months, and it just all seemed crazy. Like, you realize the looks that you get. People are kind of like, man, like he's, it's kind of like a dream. They're kind of dreaming, like he's dreaming
Right.
about it. Like, what is he really doing? So I think going to those meetups and meeting people who are actually doing business helped me kind of keep pushing, because these were people who have already done it. And so when I was in a space where, you start to doubt yourself, like, man, am I tripping? Am I really just chasing, something that isn't there? It really helped in a sense of keeping my mindset right and understanding that I just had to trust the process and know that it was going to come.
And that's where it's good to have that group of people around you, right? Like you said, they're doing stuff that you're wanting to do. It's good when they're there to help you, kind of pull you out of the trenches and 100%. Say, hey, trust the process. 100%. It works. Put in the time and it's going to work. 100%. So that's awesome. What
are you looking for with people that you're putting yourself around now?
I'm looking for people that are doing bigger and better things. People who are doing deals. People who maybe found a better marketing strategy or is utilizing a marketing strategy to a higher level than what I'm doing. People who are better negotiators. At the end of the day, I kind of got to look at myself like I'm still new to it, even though, to someone who is new to it, they feel like I'm so far out of reach from them. But the only difference is I have started doing deals and I am around people who are doing a whole lot more. So to me, I feel like I haven't been anywhere. Whereas in, all honesty, I'm a whole lot further than where I was.
Right.
So yeah.
Going back, you're at the very start.
Yes.
You have a mentor walk up to you, and it's you from now. What are you telling yourself from the past on networking and this business and how you get started? What's that piece of advice that you're going to tell yourself?
Just to trust yourself, believe in yourself. I think that's the hardest thing. I think a lot of people, get down on themselves when they don't see results right away. But I think just trust your preparation for where you're trying to go. Trust what your eyes are telling you, right? You see something, just because someone is telling you like, hey, that's not how it works, or I've never seen someone do that, doesn't necessarily mean that it can't be done. It just means based off of their exposure, they haven't seen it done, right? So having a mentor in that area, in that arena, who's seen it, who's done it, definitely helps when it comes to your mindset and keeping you pushing forward and keeping your confidence, because now you're surrounded by someone who has been there and done it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we all know that your network is your net worth, right?
100%.
We've heard that instilled in all of us over and over and over again. So what's next for Mike Butler?
Man, that's still kind of hard to really say, man. I feel like every day, I'm a true visionary, you know. I just, It depends on when you ask me and kind of what's going on at the time. If you asked me last year, it would have been to consistently be able to do deals. We figured out how to be able to do that. So now it'd be, you know, trying to make $100K in a month, right? Working on putting more people around me, so I'm no longer working so much inside of the business, right? My wife will be finishing school in December. And I think that's going to be her main focus for our business, is going to be her building the portfolio. She's a little bit more conservative than I am, right?
There you go.
She's a little bit, she takes care of the bills, right? You know, she makes sure that things get paid when it's supposed to get paid. And so to me, the natural movement, I believe, for her would be for her to focus more on building our portfolio, and I focus more on generating the money from the wholesaling side of it. But just partnering up with Stratton and going into different markets and stuff like that, going into South Bend, kind of where you guys are, seeing the progress and the success that you guys are having there, it's definitely eye-opening. So I think as a brand, kind of where we need to move a little bit more is starting to build a little bit more private money to be able to start building probably a little bit earlier.
Okay. Sweet. You're moving your business into multiple markets, it sounds like, and we've talked about that off recording and whatnot. So I don't know what you're comfortable sharing, but
open book.
What are you doing right now to help develop that business? I mean, you're still fresh in the business, just like you said. We're all fresh. 2 years isn't long enough.
Yeah.
What are you doing that you see in other markets that you've already done here? What are you doing to replicate what you've already done?
To replicate, like you said, I'm kind of just doing the same thing. I mean, here we did cold calling here in Fresno, or just the Central Valley in general. We did cold calling, and I did texting. Texting is something that's been great for me. I think moving into other markets really came out of frustration. Me and Stratton, we just talk a lot, and I'm never the one to say that, a market is getting dry or whatever that may be, because there's constantly people doing deals, right? I just think from my business and our standpoint, when it comes to the data that we have, we feel like at some point it's tough to scale it, right? When you're in the Central Valley, I mean, we've texted a lot of people. If you have a house here, we most likely have talked to you, right? And so the biggest thing was, how do you go from doing 1, 2, 3 deals a month to doing 10, 12, 15 deals a month? Well, I don't think that, it's something that you'll be able to do in one central market. And I think having a bigger belief system and kind of fighting through those fears of going to other markets virtually. I mean, there's no big difference in what you do here and what you would do in another market, except that you can't physically be there. So at that point, now we talk about networking, you talk about resources. So one thing that we did was, we knew that when it came to rents and when we came to overall pricing for homes in Indiana, more specifically Indianapolis, we knew that was something that was interesting to us. And so we just said, you know what, we just buy data. We're going to put some cold callers on it, and we're going to text it and see what comes of that. Did we know how it's going to turn out? No, we don't. But the benefit of this business is that you're able to, make money.
Yeah.
Right. So you're able to try things out. You're able to take the time that it takes to refine certain details in other markets, because the results that you will get from taking the time and going through that learning curve is, it's huge.
Yeah. So from a networking standpoint, I mean, obviously here locally, I mean, we can go to the meetups, we can meet up with all the people that we know. How challenging has it been to establish and network in some of these out-of-state places that you're working?
Man, it is pretty challenging because as we kind of talked about earlier, we don't realize that we move so fast.
Yeah.
And so one thing that I'm really noticing about going to Indiana is that, things aren't as fast as we're used to. The pace and the commitment. I don't want to say the commitment. I never want to question anyone's commitment. But the biggest thing is just reaching out to someone and understanding that you're not going to get that instant reply, right? I text anybody or call anybody here in our market, and you're getting a call back within 5 minutes, right? So it's really one thing I'm learning about, other markets is to have more patience, and just really attacking it the same way, utilizing Facebook, right? I go into Indianapolis groups and different Facebook forums that we have to our dispense, and I kind of go on there and I look for anyone in that market that's either a realtor, a wholesaler, anyone that's posting deals on their Facebook page, someone that's active, right? I'm looking for someone that's actually doing the business, and I'm just reaching out to them, seeing if there's any type of way that I can bring any value to them. Right. If they're looking for deals, well, I have no problem in the sense of getting deals. Right. So the biggest thing that I'm going to need is someone's input on what the area, kind of like what type of area it is, right. Typically what buyers are buying, which helps me in my negotiation of the prices and stuff like that. And if I'm bringing JV deals to them, I think I'm creating a massive value to them.
So for the people that are listening, it sounds like you're going and providing value to other people, even though you're doing stuff here. And that's how you're breaking into that market. For somebody who's interested here, is there anything that somebody could do for you that maybe we could help hook you up with? Somebody that could help you do dispositioning, or are you looking to hire anybody, or you need an assistant for anything?
No, I'm not looking to hire anyone. For the most point, we've been able to outsource a lot of the calling and stuff like that. I still handle the text messaging. So I'm kind of in my own way at this moment because I really do enjoy texting.
Right.
And the business hasn't jumped to a point where I feel like it's not something that I can handle because we are constantly marketing with the callers. So it kind of allows me to be a little bit inconsistent when it comes to the text messaging, but it's also been the one that's made us the most money up to this point. But I say the value that you can bring to me is really just if you know of anyone looking to sell or anything like that, or you have a deal that you're having a hard time comping or having a hard time negotiating, bring it to me. We could work it together. And it kind of just, it's not always going to be a JV type thing, right? You may have done a lot of the work and you're bringing it to me, telling me that this is the price that they want, and the price is a slam dunk, right? I'm not going to sit there and try to take a cut out of something that you pretty much did a great job at, right? So whether it be me walking you through the transaction, I have no problem being able to do that because at the end of the day, it's not all about monetary. It's not all monetary. It's not about necessarily you bringing me a deal for me to make money on. I understand that if I create value for someone else, that it's going to come back some way or another. You know what I mean? So I might not make money off of a deal, and that's okay with me because I'm building a relationship with someone who you don't know what their future holds, right? You mentioned it with people wanting to invest with you guys, and you're not where they would want you to be in a sense of volume or whatever it may be, but the fact that you guys are as young as you are doing the volume that you are doing, they understand that I got to bring him value now because the value that he's going to bring me in 10 years is going to be more than worth it. Right. So that's kind of how I see it, right? I can bring value to someone who isn't there yet, but I can't predict the value that they're going to bring me in 10 years. Yeah. Nor do I really care. I know this business is hard. Yeah. Some of them may not even make it through. Right. But if they do, it could be worth a whole lot more in the future.
Yeah. So how can people find you if they're interested in reaching out and getting in contact with you?
Instagram. Instagram is where I'm probably the most active.
What's your handle?
My handle is @MichaelButler_Jr.
Boom.
Sweet.
Right. So shoot me a follow. Shoot me some questions. Interact with any posts that I have. That's definitely where I like to be. I definitely got to step it up a little bit more. I go through little spurts where I'm a little bit more active in certain times, depending on how business is going. And again, me being heavily involved in my business, it's going to dictate how much attention that I really put towards it. And then Facebook, Michael Butler Jr. That's kind of where a lot more of the real estate stuff happens. They could reach out to me either way, and I'll get back to them.
Perfect. Well, we're so happy that you're our first guest in season 2. You're an absolute resource for anybody in the business, especially in the wholesaling side, networking, understanding how that works. And now you're going to be a resource for people, for anybody interested in out of state. You're going to be getting that experience. So we're super happy you came on.
I appreciate you guys, man. I really appreciate you.
We appreciate you too, man. Thank you.
Thank you.